My name is Rebecca Stone, and I'm 29 years old. 3 weeks ago, I bought a scratch-off ticket at my local grocery store and won $52 million. I still have that ticket hidden in my jewelry box. The crazy part. I decided to keep it secret from everyone. Why would someone hide winning the lottery? Because I wanted to know who in my family would help me when I had nothing, not when I had everything. If you're watching this story, please leave a comment telling me what country you're from. Before I tell you about my secret test, make sure to hit like and subscribe to Her Revenge for more shocking family stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. My life before winning was pretty simple. I worked at a coffee shop downtown, making barely enough money to pay my bills. I lived in a tiny studio apartment where my bed was also my couch and my dining table. Every month felt like a puzzle, trying to figure out which bill to pay late and which groceries I could skip. The coffee shop job was tough. I worked 6 days a week, standing for 10 hours a day, dealing with rude customers who complained about everything. My boss, Karen, never gave me raises even though I'd been there for 3 years. She always found excuses to cut my hours when business was slow, but expected me to work overtime during busy periods without extra pay. My hands were always stained brown from coffee, and I smelled like espresso beans even on my days off. But it was honest work, and I was proud of supporting myself. My family situation was messy. My parents, Robert and Linda, got divorced when I was 15. Dad moved across town with his new girlfriend, Sandra, who was only 8 years older than me. Mom struggled with depression after the divorce and started drinking heavily. She eventually married Tom, a mechanic who seemed nice at first but turned out to be controlling and mean. I have one brother, Marcus, who's 26 and thinks he's going to be a famous rapper someday. Marcus has never held a steady job for more than a few months. He's always working on his music career, which really means he sits in his bedroom making beats on his computer and posting videos online that get maybe 10 views. He's constantly asking family members for money, promising he'll pay everyone back when his music takes off. But instead of saving money or getting a real job, he spends everything on expensive sneakers and studio time that never leads anywhere. Then there's my cousin Emma, who's 31 and works as a nurse. She's the only one in the family who went to college and got a real career. Everyone always talks about how proud they are of Emma and how she's the success story of the family. She makes good money at the hospital and lives in a nice apartment, but she's also become pretty snobbish about it. She looks down on the rest of us for not having professional jobs like her. My grandmother, Nana Rose, is 78 years old and lives alone in the same house where my mom grew up. She's on a fixed income from Social Security, but somehow she's always the first person to offer help when anyone in the family needs it. She clips coupons, shops at thrift stores, and grows vegetables in her backyard to save money. Her house is old and needs repairs, but she never complains about anything. She just quietly makes do with what she has. Over the years, I'd helped my family members whenever they asked. When Marcus needed money for new equipment, I gave him $500 from my savings. When my mom's car broke down, I paid $300 for repairs even though it meant I had to eat ramen noodles for 2 weeks. When Dad needed help with his rent after Sandra left him, I sent him $200 that I borrowed from my credit card. Each time they promised to pay me back. None of them ever did. The worst part wasn't the money itself. It was how they acted like I owed them help, but never offered any in return. When I got sick with the flu and missed a week of work, nobody checked on me or offered to bring me soup. When my car got towed and I had to walk to work in the rain, nobody offered me a ride. They only called when they needed something from me. It made me feel used and invisible. I started buying scratch-off tickets about 2 years ago. It was my only little treat for myself each week. I'd buy one $5 ticket every Friday after work, scratch it off while drinking my coffee, and dream about what I'd do if I ever won big. My family thought it was stupid. Marcus said I was wasting money that I could give him instead. Mom called it a fool's game. Dad lectured me about how the lottery was designed to take advantage of poor people. But those tickets gave me hope. $5 for a few minutes of dreaming didn't seem like too much to ask for. I imagined paying off my student loans, buying a car that didn't break down every month, maybe even going back to school to become a teacher like I'd always wanted. Sometimes I'd picture having enough money to help my family without worrying about my own bills. I wanted to be the person who could solve everyone's problems. My daily routine was the same every day. Wake up at 5 a.m., shower, grab a banana and a cup of instant coffee, then walk 20 minutes to work because I couldn't afford a car payment and insurance. Work until 3 p.m., walk home, buy groceries with whatever money I had left, cook dinner, watch Netflix on my phone since I couldn't afford cable, then go to bed early to do it all again tomorrow. I counted every penny. I knew exactly how much I spent on food each week, how much my utilities cost, how much I needed for bus fare if it was raining too hard to walk. I shopped at the dollar store for shampoo and toothpaste. I cut my own hair because salon visits were too expensive. I wore the same clothes until they fell apart, then bought replacements at thrift stores. It wasn't a bad life, but it was small and limited. The day I won was actually my birthday. I'd worked a double shift because one of my co-workers called in sick, and I needed the extra money. I was exhausted and my feet hurt, but I stopped at Murphy's gas station like I always did on Fridays. "Happy birthday, Becky," said Joe, the cashier who knew me because I bought my weekly ticket there. "Thanks, Joe. Give me the usual." But then I noticed a new scratch-off game called Golden Dreams, and decided to try it instead of my regular ticket. I scratched it off right there at the counter while Joe watched. The first symbol was a dollar sign. Then another. Then another. "Holy moly," Joe whispered as I kept scratching. More dollar signs appeared, and then the amount. $52 million. My hand started shaking so badly I almost dropped the ticket. Joe grabbed my arm. "Becky, I think you just won $52 million. I stared at the ticket, sure I was reading it wrong. We checked it 3 times. Joe called his manager over. They verified it with the lottery app on their phones. It was real. I had actually won $52 million. After taxes, it would be about $30 million. Joe was so excited he was jumping up and down behind the counter. "You did it. You actually did it." But instead of feeling happy, I felt scared. Everything was about to change, and I wasn't sure I was ready. I drove home in a daze, clutching that ticket like my life depended on it. I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at those scratch-off symbols, trying to process what had just happened. $30 million. More money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Enough to buy a mansion, travel the world, never work again. But all I could think about was what this would mean for my relationships with my family. I spent the whole night researching lottery winners online. Story after story of people whose lives fell apart after winning. Families destroyed by greed. Friends who disappeared when the money ran out. Relatives fighting in court over inheritances. Winners who ended up broke and alone within a few years. One article said that most lottery winners wish they'd never bought the ticket. That scared me more than being poor ever did. By morning I'd made my decision. I would claim the money, but I wouldn't tell anyone about it. Not yet. First, I needed to find out who in my family would help me when I needed it, not when I had millions to share. I wanted to know who really cared about me as a person, not as a potential source of money. It might sound mean, but I'd been hurt too many times by people who only saw me as useful. I called in sick to work and spent the day meeting with lawyers and financial advisors. I set up a trust, claimed the prize anonymously, and put most of the money in investments I couldn't touch for years. I kept some in checking accounts for daily expenses, but not so much that I'd be tempted to go crazy with spending. The lawyers helped me create a plan to protect the money and my privacy. Now came the hard part. I needed to create a situation where I could test my family's willingness to help me. I decided to tell them I'd been laid off from the coffee shop and needed money for rent and food. It wasn't a huge amount. Just $1,000 to get me through the month while I looked for a new job. Anyone with a decent income could afford to help with that much, especially family members I'd helped before. I practiced my story in the mirror until it sounded natural and believable. I would tell them that the coffee shop was closing because the owner couldn't afford rent anymore. I'd say I was looking for work but hadn't found anything yet, and I was worried about getting evicted if I couldn't pay my bills. It was a simple story that could happen to anyone in this economy. My first call was to my mom. She answered on the second ring, sounding distracted. Hey mom, I have some bad news. The coffee shop closed down and I lost my job. There was a pause. Oh no, honey, that's terrible. Have you started looking for something new? I told her about applying everywhere but not hearing back yet. Then I asked if she could lend me $1,000 for rent. Oh sweetie, I wish I could help, but Tom just bought a new truck and we're stretched pretty thin right now. She sounded genuinely sorry, but I noticed she didn't offer alternatives or ask what I was going to do. Maybe try Marcus or Emma. Emma makes good money at the hospital. She suggested I call other people instead of figuring out how to help me herself. It stung, but I wasn't surprised. Next I called my dad. He was at work and sounded rushed. That's rough, kiddo. The economy's tough right now. When I asked for help with the $1,000, he sighed heavily. Rebecca, you know Sandra and I are trying to save up for our wedding. We can't really afford to lend money right now. It was the same woman who left him 2 years ago, but apparently they were back together and planning a wedding that was more important than helping his daughter. But Dad, I helped you with rent when Sandra left the first time. I reminded him. I know and I appreciated that, but this is different. We have to think about our future. He suggested I apply for food stamps and look into government assistance programs instead of asking family for help. His own daughter was about to be homeless, and his advice was to get in line at the welfare office. Marcus was next on my list. When I told him about losing my job, his first response was, "That sucks. Hey, while I have you on the phone, can you listen to this new track I made?" He wanted to play me his music instead of addressing my problem. When I finally managed to ask for help with rent money, he laughed. "Sis, I'm broker than you are. I was actually going to ask if you had any money I could borrow." "Marcus, I just told you I lost my job and might get evicted," said. "Yeah, that's rough, but my music career is just starting to take off. I can't afford to help right now." He spent the next 10 minutes telling me about some producer who might be interested in his songs, completely ignoring the fact that I'd called him for help. It was like talking to a wall. Emma's response was the most disappointing of all. "Rebecca, I hate to say this, but maybe losing that coffee shop job is a blessing in disguise. You're smart enough to do something better with your life." She turned my crisis into a lecture about my career choices. When I asked for the $1,000, she said, "I don't think giving you money is going to solve the real problem here. The real problem is that I need to pay rent so I don't become homeless," said. "But what happens next month when you're in the same situation again?" Emma replied, "I think you need to figure out a long-term plan instead of just asking family to bail you out." This from the same cousin who borrowed $300 from me last Christmas for vacation spending money. She made it sound like I was some kind of charity case. The rejections kept coming. My stepfather Tom told me he didn't have money to lend because he wasn't my real father anyway. Sandra, my dad's girlfriend, actually laughed when I called and said I must be desperate to ask her for help. Even distant relatives found excuses. Everyone had reasons why they couldn't spare $1,000 to keep their own family member from getting evicted. By the end of the week, I was feeling pretty depressed about my family. 7 people had turned me down flat, and 3 more hadn't even returned my calls. These were the same people who had come to me for help over the years, and now when I needed them, they were nowhere to be found. I started to wonder if I'd been fooling myself about how much they cared about me. Then, on Saturday morning, my phone rang. It was Nana Rose. "Honey, I heard about your job from your mother. Are you okay?" Her voice was full of genuine concern, not the polite sympathy I'd been getting from everyone else. I told her about my situation and how worried I was about paying rent. "Well, we can't have you living on the streets," she said immediately. "I'm coming over." An hour later, Nana Rose knocked on my door carrying a plate of homemade cookies and her old leather purse. She sat down on my couch and pulled out an envelope. "This is everything I have in my savings account. It's $800. I know it's not quite the full $1,000, but it'll cover most of your rent." I stared at the envelope, knowing that $800 was probably everything she had in the world. Nana, I can't take your savings. What if you have an emergency? She waved her hand dismissively. What good is money if you can't help your family when they need it? Besides, you're a good girl, Rebecca. You work hard and you don't ask for help unless you really need it. She pressed the envelope into my hands. You take this and don't worry about paying me back until you get on your feet. I started crying right there on my couch. Here was this elderly woman living on Social Security, giving me her entire savings account because she didn't want me to be homeless. Meanwhile, my cousin who made $60,000 a year couldn't spare $1,000. My parents, who both had steady jobs and savings, couldn't help their own daughter. But my 78-year-old grandmother emptied her bank account without hesitation. You don't have to do this, I whispered through my tears. Yes, I do, Nana Rose said firmly. Family takes care of family. That's how I was raised, and that's how I raised your mother, though I don't know where I went wrong with her. She hugged me tight. You're going to be okay, sweetheart. This is just a bump in the road. After Nana Rose left, I sat holding that envelope and thinking about what had just happened. The person with the least to give had given the most. The person who could least afford to help had been the only one willing to help. It made me see my family in a completely different way. All those years I'd been focusing on the wrong relationships. That night I made a decision. I was going to tell Nana Rose the truth about the lottery. She deserved to know that her generosity hadn't gone unnoticed, and she deserved to benefit from my good fortune. But first I needed to process what I'd learned about everyone else. The test had shown me exactly who my real family was, and it wasn't who I thought it would be. I called my lawyer the next day and set up a meeting. I want to do something special for my grandmother, I told him. What do you have in mind? He asked. I want to pay off her house, set up a trust fund for her medical expenses, and make sure she never has to worry about money again. But I want to do it in a way that doesn't overwhelm her or make her suspicious. We worked out a plan. I would tell Nana Rose about winning the lottery, but I'd say it was a smaller amount. Maybe $500,000 instead of $52 million. That would be enough to explain how I could help her without making her feel like she was taking advantage of me. The lawyer helped me set up trusts and anonymous payments that would take care of all her expenses for the rest of her life. The next day, I went to Nana Rose's house with a box of her favorite donuts and the envelope she'd given me. I have something to tell you, I said, sitting at her kitchen table where I'd eaten countless meals growing up. And I have something to give back to you. I handed her the envelope. I don't need this anymore. She looked confused. What do you mean you don't need it? Did you find a job already? I took a deep breath. Nana, I need to tell you something that's going to sound crazy. I won the lottery. Not a huge amount, but enough to take care of myself and help you too. Her eyes widened. How much? She asked. $500,000, I lied. After taxes, it's enough to pay off your house and set up a fund for your medical expenses. Nana Rose stared at me for a long moment, then started laughing. You mean to tell me that while I was giving you my life savings, you were secretly a lottery winner? I nodded, feeling embarrassed. I'm sorry I lied to you, but I needed to know who in the family would help me when I had nothing. You were the only one. Oh, honey, she said, reaching across the table to pat my hand. I understand exactly why you did that. People show their true colors when money's involved. She smiled sadly. I wish I could say I'm surprised by how the others acted, but I'm not. I raised your mother to be better than that, but somewhere along the way, she forgot what family means. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about my family and what the lottery win meant for both of us. Nana Rose was more excited about my good fortune than worried about what it would change. Money doesn't make you a different person, she said. It just makes you more of who you already are. And you're a good person, Rebecca. Over the next few weeks, I quietly took care of Nana Rose's expenses. I paid off her mortgage through an anonymous benefactor program at the bank. I set up automatic payments for all her utilities and medical bills. I arranged for grocery delivery and house cleaning services. She never knew how much everything cost because I made it all seem like small gestures instead of major expenses. Meanwhile, I had to figure out what to do about the rest of my family. They all thought I was still unemployed and struggling. Some of them had started spreading gossip about how irresponsible I was with money and how I was always asking people for handouts. It hurt to hear those things, especially since I'd been the one helping them for years. I decided to let them keep thinking I was poor. They'd shown me who they really were, and I didn't see any reason to give them another chance to prove me wrong. Instead, I focused on building a new life with people who actually cared about me. I quit the coffee shop and started volunteering at a literacy program where Nana Rose had worked when she was younger. The volunteer work led to other opportunities. I met people who valued kindness and generosity, people who helped others without expecting anything in return. I started dating a teacher named David who had no idea about my money. He liked me for who I was, not what I could do for him. It was refreshing to have relationships based on genuine connection instead of transactions. One day, about 3 months after my fake job loss, Marcus called me. "Hey sis, I hate to ask, but could you lend me $50? I know you're struggling too, but I'm really desperate." It was such a small amount compared to what I could afford, but I said no. "Sorry Marcus, I'm still looking for work and I don't have anything to spare." "Come on, it's just $50. You helped me before." He sounded annoyed. "That was when I had a job," I replied. "Things are different now." He hung up on me, frustrated that his usual source of emergency money had dried up. It confirmed what I already knew. He only called when he needed something, never to check on how I was doing. Emma called a few weeks later with a different approach. "Rebecca, I've been thinking about your situation, and I want to help you get back on your feet. I know someone who might be hiring at the hospital." It sounded generous, but then she added, "Of course, you'd have to start at minimum wage, but it would be steady work." She was offering to help me find a job that paid less than what I'd made at the coffee shop. "Thanks for thinking of me," I said politely. "But I'm exploring some other options right now." I didn't tell her about the volunteer work or my plans to go back to school. She didn't deserve to know about the good things happening in my life. "Well, don't wait too long," she said. "Opportunities like this don't come around often for people in your situation." Her condescending tone reminded me why I'd been right to test everyone. Even when she was supposedly trying to help, Emma couldn't resist making me feel small. She saw me as someone who needed rescuing from my poor life choices, not as an equal who had hit a rough patch. Her idea of help came with judgment and conditions attached. 6 months passed, and I'd settled into my new routine. I was taking online classes to get my teaching certificate, volunteering at the literacy center, and spending time with David and Nana Rose. My family assumed I was barely surviving, working odd jobs and struggling to pay bills. They'd stopped calling except for the occasional guilt-inducing check, and that was really just them making sure I couldn't help them anymore. The turning point came when Nana Rose had a minor heart attack. I was the only one who visited her in the hospital every day. I made sure she had everything she needed, arranged for home care when she was discharged, and stayed with her until she was fully recovered. Meanwhile, the rest of the family sent cards and made excuses about being too busy to visit. "You know what I realized?" Nana Rose said one evening as we sat on her porch watching the sunset. "When people show you who they are, you should believe them the first time. I spent years making excuses for your mother and the others, thinking they'd change. But they never did." She squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing with your test. Better to know the truth than live in denial." A year after winning the lottery, I decided it was time to make some changes. I bought a modest house in the same neighborhood as Nana Rose. Nothing fancy but comfortable and safe. I told my family I'd found work as a freelance bookkeeper, which explained why I could afford rent and seemed to be doing better. They didn't ask many questions because they weren't really interested in my life. David and I got engaged, and I finally told him about the lottery win. He was shocked at first, worried that I'd been testing him too. "I was," I admitted. "But you passed without even knowing there was a test. You loved me when you thought I was poor. You never asked me for money, and you supported my dreams even when they seemed unrealistic. We planned a small wedding with just the people who really mattered to us. Nana Rose, David's family, friends from the literacy center, and a few co-workers who had become genuine friends. My biological family wasn't invited, and I didn't feel bad about it. They'd had their chance to be part of my life when it mattered, and they'd chosen not to take it. Marcus found out about the wedding through social media and called me, angry that he hadn't been invited. "I'm your brother," he said. "Family should be at family weddings." "You're right," I replied. "That's why Nana Rose is walking me down the aisle and David's sister is my maid of honor. My real family will be there." The wedding was perfect. Simple, meaningful, and filled with people who genuinely cared about our happiness. Nana Rose cried during the ceremony, and David's parents welcomed me like their own daughter. It was everything I dreamed of when I was working at that coffee shop, living paycheck to paycheck and wondering if anyone would ever love me for who I really was. 2 years later, David and I started a foundation to help families in crisis. We focused on single parents, elderly people on fixed incomes, and young adults aging out of foster care. The foundation was anonymous, but we were able to help hundreds of families avoid homelessness, pay for medical treatments, and get back on their feet after job losses or other emergencies. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was now helping strangers with the same problems I'd pretended to have when testing my family. But these people were grateful for assistance and used it to improve their lives. They sent thank you letters and updates on their progress. They didn't take the help for granted or assume they were entitled to more. Nana Rose became involved with the foundation too, helping us identify families in need and making sure our assistance reached the right people. At 80 years old, she was still determined to help others however she could. "This is what money should be used for," she said during one of our board meetings. "Making life better for people who are trying their best but need a hand up." My relationship with my biological family remained distant but civil. We exchanged Christmas cards and birthday messages, but that was about it. Occasionally, one of them would call with a crisis that required financial help, but I'd learned to redirect them to other resources. I wasn't angry anymore. I just understood that we were different kinds of people with different values. The foundation work introduced me to so many inspiring people. Single mothers working 2 jobs to support their kids. Elderly men and women choosing between medication and groceries. Young people trying to go to college without family support. Their stories reminded me how lucky I was, not just because of the lottery win, but because of Nana Rose's example of unconditional love and generosity. 5 years after winning the lottery, I was living a completely different life than I'd imagined. I wasn't traveling the world or buying expensive cars. Instead, I was married to a wonderful man, working on meaningful projects, and surrounded by people who valued the same things I did. The money had given me freedom, but Nana Rose had given me wisdom about how to use that freedom well. One day, Emma called me out of the blue. "Rebecca, I've been doing some thinking about how I treated you when you lost your job a few years ago. I realize I wasn't very supportive, and I wanted to apologize. It was the first time any of my family members had acknowledged their behavior during my test. I appreciated the apology, but it didn't change anything fundamental about our relationship." "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "It means something that you recognize it." We talked for a few more minutes, but it felt like a conversation between strangers being polite to each other. The damage had been done years earlier, and an apology couldn't repair relationships that had never been genuine in the first place. The biggest lesson I learned wasn't about money or family. It was about the difference between people who love you and people who love what you can do for them. Real love doesn't keep score. Doesn't calculate costs and benefits. It doesn't disappear when you can't provide something useful. Real love shows up when you need it most, even when there's nothing in it for the other person. Nana Rose passed away peacefully at age 83, surrounded by people who adored her. At her funeral, the church was packed with former students, neighbors, and people she'd helped over the years. My mother and the others came to the service, but they sat in the back while I delivered the eulogy. I talked about her generosity, her wisdom, and her understanding of what family really means. After the funeral, I established a scholarship in Nana Rose's name for students pursuing education degrees. Every year, we give awards to young people who demonstrate both academic promise and a commitment to helping others. It's a small way to continue her legacy of caring for people who need support and encouragement. Now, 7 years after winning the lottery, I look back on that test as one of the best decisions I ever made. It hurt to learn the truth about my family, but it freed me from years of one-sided relationships and false expectations. More importantly, it showed me the value of the one person who had always been there for me, even when I was too focused on everyone else to notice. The money is still there, growing in investments and funding our foundation's work. David and I live comfortably but not extravagantly. We drive reliable cars, live in a nice but modest house, and spend our money on experiences and helping others rather than showing off. The lottery win gave us security and purpose, but it didn't change who we are at our core. We're still the same people who believe in hard work, kindness, and taking care of the people who matter. Sometimes people ask me if I regret keeping the lottery win secret for so long. The answer is absolutely not. That secret saved me from making terrible mistakes with both my money and my relationships. It showed me who deserved to be part of my new life and who didn't. It taught me that love isn't something you can buy, and the people worth having in your life don't need to be bought. My advice to anyone who comes into sudden wealth is simple. Don't tell anyone right away. Take time to process what it means. Get professional help managing the money. And most importantly, pay attention to how people treat you when they think you have nothing to offer them. Those are the relationships worth investing in. The foundation has now helped over 2,000 families, and we're expanding to include educational programs and job training. We work with local businesses to create opportunities for people who need second chances. Every success story reminds me that money is just a tool. What matters is how you use it to make the world a little bit better. David and I are expecting our first child next month, a little girl we're naming Rose after my grandmother. She'll grow up knowing that family isn't about blood relations or financial obligations. It's about people who choose to love and support each other, especially when times are tough. She'll learn that real wealth isn't measured in dollars but in the quality of your relationships and the difference you make in other people's lives. Looking back, winning the lottery was just the beginning of my story, not the end. The real prize wasn't the money. It was discovering who I really was and what I valued most. It was learning to set boundaries with people who saw me as useful rather than valuable. It was understanding that Nana Rose had been showing me what love looked like my entire life, and I'd been too distracted by everyone else to fully appreciate it. If you're watching this and you're struggling with difficult family relationships, I want you to know that you don't owe anyone access to your life just because you share DNA. Family is something you build with people who show up for you consistently, not something you're stuck with because of biology. Choose people who celebrate your successes instead of trying to benefit from them. The test I conducted wasn't cruel. It was necessary. It saved me from years of one-sided relationships and showed me where to invest my emotional energy. Some people called it manipulative when they found out, but I think it was just honest. I gave everyone the same opportunity to show kindness, and their responses revealed everything I needed to know about their character. Today, my life is rich in ways that have nothing to do with my bank account. I wake up every morning excited about the work we're doing through the foundation. I'm married to someone who loves me for who I am, not what I can provide. I'm surrounded by genuine friendships built on mutual respect and shared values. And I'm about to become a mother, ready to teach my daughter about love, generosity, and the importance of choosing your family wisely. The money will always be there, earning interest and funding good causes. But the real treasure I found was understanding the difference between being loved and being used. That knowledge is worth more than any lottery jackpot because it guides every decision I make about who to trust, who to help, and who deserves a place in my heart. To everyone who's ever felt taken advantage of by family members or friends, remember this. You teach people how to treat you by what you accept. Don't accept crumbs of affection from people who expect the whole meal from you. Look for the Nana Roses in your life. The people who give without keeping score, who show up without being asked, who love you at your lowest point. My story could have gone very differently if I'd announced my lottery win right away. I probably would have been surrounded by people pretending to love me for my money, and I never would have known the difference. Instead, I got something much more valuable. Clarity about who my real family is and confidence in my ability to build meaningful relationships. The scratch-off ticket I bought that Friday night changed my life, but not in the way I expected. It didn't make me happier because I could buy anything I wanted. It made me happier because it showed me what I already had in Nana Rose and what I could build with David and our friends. The money was just the tool that revealed these truths. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Real love doesn't need to be tested because it proves itself every day through small acts of kindness and support. But when you're not sure who really cares about you, sometimes a test can save you years of heartache and help you focus your energy on the relationships that actually matter. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better than one-sided relationships. Leave a comment telling me about a time someone showed you what real family looks like. And remember, the most important lottery you can win is discovering who truly loves you for who you are. That's the jackpot that changes everything.